Hey guys, in this video I'll share top 3 Space Marine winning lists from recent tournaments and how we can use these guys' victories to improve our own lists and results in games. So without further ado, let's dive right in. I have some really cool ones today, including a Raven Guard list, which is not something that we see often. How about we start with just that? It's a Raven Guard Gladius Task Force list by Adrian Koba, who took a second place undefeated at a 48-player 5-round Grand Tournament in Spain on April 12, 2025. Those were judging the place in the top 3 by the place that was taken by the roster, by the player, and also the quantity of players in the Grand Tournament, because obviously the bigger tournament, the more valuable, statistically speaking, the victory is. It's a rather unusual Gladius list as well, and it goes deep into some areas that I don't see people going into that often, which I think might have been one of the reasons why it did so well. People are just not prepared to face this. First, let's talk about the things that are easy to understand. We have Ballistus Dreadnought. I'm not going to be going in order because it's not for this list. It's not that interesting. We have Ballistus Dreadnought to provide some shooting. We have 2 Vindicators to provide even more shooting, glorious shooting at that. We have the 3 Inceptors to give us some mobility and being able to get shooting across the table and maybe perhaps threaten a home objective for your opponent, despite them not being able to deep strike within 3 inches anymore, but they still can get to the home objective unit and destroy it and then eventually capture the home objective. So they are an interesting, a very useful tech piece. I don't know why Adrian chose the bolters instead of the plasma. Plasma would be my choice, but bolters are definitely not bad as well, especially considering Gladius has the stratagem to give them extra AP, so we're good here. Now we're slowly starting to get into this weird territory. We have 3 units of jump back intercessors. That's unusual. I love jump back intercessors, but I don't think I've ever wanted to run more than 2 unless I was running a Liberator Assault Group. And having 3 units of 5 gives Adrian a lot of that skirmishing capability here, as well as some really nice scoring early in the game when he's not exposing those 5-man squads and he's just keeping them behind the ruins, jumping from one ruin to another, doing actions and not being offensive yet. And one of these squads is going to be led by Kevin Shrike, because he can either lead the Vanguard Vets, which are not in this list, or the jump back intercessors. So I am assuming it's going to be jump back intercessors. Would make the squad a lone up unit, making it even harder for the opponent to deal with them. So 2 of the units can be behind the ruins and 1 of them can be right in the open, but protected by the lone up rule. And Shrike definitely makes this unit punch way harder than it cost. I don't know why Adrian decided to go with a 5-man instead of a 10-man, because I personally like the idea of having, especially in Gladius, having Shrike plus 10 guys who can be this sort of ultimate skirmish / damage dealing piece, advancing up the board for the Assault Doctrine and then popping the +1 to AP, +1 to wounds on the turn where they're charging. I feel like this is a good idea, but also perhaps he didn't want to invest so many points into this and instead wanted something relatively cheap. And I totally understand that as well. Continuing down the weird lane, we have the Captain with Honor Vehement and another Captain on foot without any enhancements and a Captain in Gravis armor with Artificer armor. So let's dig into this. Why is this here? My interpretation is that Captain with Honor Vehement is going to join either the Assault Intercessors or the the Stern Guard Vets to get himself the extra rerolls to wound, so that when he does activate his finest hour, he is going to be the most efficient, fishing for those devastating ones. The second Captain is going to join the other squad, which again is going to be the Stern Guard or the Assault Intercessors, and that unit is also going to be one of those skirmishing pieces that Adrian can use to just send out at an opportune moment. And because we have the Assault Doctrine, he can choose which turn he has the most advances and charges and which turn he just chooses to advance and charge 1 unit. And Captain Gravis armor is actually just not going to join anyone. He's going to be on foot. That's why he has Artificer armor here. So he has the 2+ save and 5+ film of pain, and he just is naturally very tough and is pretty good in combat. So it's sort of like Adrian's idea of a lone up character without the lone up rule, but with a lot of combat. And those 2 captain squads, potentially with the Gravis captain as well, depending on how the mood is. They go into the Land Raider Redeemer, which is not something that we see that often nowadays because they're so expensive, but it is a very interesting combination because the Redeemer can actually fit both of these squads plus the Gravis Captain, 14 seats. Yeah, that works out, and therefore all of those units get the incredible mobility, plus they can all disembark in different directions and go do their thing. And Tech Marine here is just for giggles to potentially like heal the Vindicators and give them +1 to hit. It's a useful unit. We've already discussed him on the channel. A very cheap thing to add to your army. If you just have 55 points, it's almost impossible to beat the efficiency of a Tech Marine if you have at least like 2 or 3 vehicles in the roster. And of course, the Intercessors are there to just guard the home objective. They have a boring but incredibly important duty. And 2 scout squads are going to be doing scout squad things, teleporting around the board and doing actions. Nothing very interesting here. A traditional combo of a sniper rifle and a missile launcher on them, so nothing to talk about here. So overall, a really good and interesting list. If I encountered that in a tournament setting, I would be perplexed and I would not know what to do exactly in the first few moments of the game for sure, because I would be really worried about the Redeemer and the Vindicators and the abundance of the jump back Intercessors. So a lot of things that make this list dangerous, and therefore the undefeated second place is a very, very much deserved result. I think this list proves the idea that having multiple small units is a very viable playstyle for Gladius, and generally speaking for all those very versatile detachments like Liberator Assault Group as well. As long as you have the necessary level of lethality in your list, which is definitely here with the 2 Vindicators and the Ballistas and the extra support from the Inceptors, you can have a very unorthodox list and still win a lot of games. Congrats to Adrian with this great result, and we continue to the next one. As always, I want to remind you about my Patreon 40K coaching service. If you're looking for help building your competitive rosters, preparing you for tournaments, or have any questions about your collection in general, check out the links for my Patreon in the description. Thank you. Which is a Space Wolves Champions of Russ list by Forrest Fenton. He took first place at a 50-player tournament, a 5-round grand tournament in Foster City, California, United States on April 12, 2025. And it's a rather traditional Wolf Jail list, with the only exception being Wolf Jail is usually played as Stormlands, and this is Champions of Rust, so it has its own cool tricks. So first of all, of course, we have the Lieutenant with a combi weapon, which I'm really happy to see here, because this is the unit that I highly recommend for you to add to your list, regardless of what chapter you're running. It's just always efficient to have this guy. He always, for me at least, makes his points back during the game. He does so many things, especially if you are careful with how you position him and just think at least for 20 seconds when you're moving him, what that move is gonna do for you strategically and for him specifically tactically. I'm really happy to see him here. We also have a Logan Grimnar on Storm Rider, so the Papa Santa Claus is here and he's gonna be leading one of the Thunderwolf Cavalry units. A massive beats. He also receives the +1 damage buff from the Thunderwolf Cavalry, making him just an incredible damage dealer. I think he's base damage 3, which makes him damage 4 when he's leading a unit. His 10 attacks sweep profile is going to be damage 2, so perfect for killing Intercessors or Chaos Space Marines in this case. Next we have Ragnar Blackmane, and this guy is a mystery to me because he does not lead any squads, so I'm not sure. Well, he can lead the Intercessors, but I'm not sure if that is the idea of the list, because he can only give advanced in charge to himself and the unit if he's actually leading the unit. So I assume he's probably joining the Intercessors, and then it's not a bad idea because his unit was going to be able to sticky the home objective and then move on to somewhere else, especially if there is no teleportation danger from your opponent's army. It can be a valid tactic and can give you a really cheap and capable in combat thanks to Ragnar skirmish unit. Next we have 2 Wolf Lords on Thunderwolves. The first one has the Black Death enhancement, which gives his melee weapons anti-monster and anti-vehicle 4+ abilities. So he has the Thunder Hammer to benefit from that vehicle anti-monster profile thanks to the devastating wounds on the Thunderhammer. He's obviously going to join one of the 6-man Thunderwolf cavalry squads, and again his Thunderhammer is going to become damage 3 on the charge with devastating wounds and anti-monster, anti-vehicle 4+. He's really dangerous against almost any high toughness target in the game. And the relic shield gives him extra wounds, so he's a bit more durable, where the second Wolf Lord is an unusual twin lightning claws guy, and he has the frost weapon enhancement, so he gets precision on his lightning claws and extra strength and extra AP on them as well. So he is a bit more anti-horde, I would say, or anti-character assassin kind of a guy. The aforementioned 5-man intercessor squad, 5-man scout unit, normal scouts in this case, missile launcher, sniper rifle, normal loadout. Of course, the 3 Thunderwolf cavalry squads that are led by each their own character. 2 Vindicators for shooting, nice traditional thing to have in your list. Never gonna fail you unless you don't know how to roll d6 shots, and if you don't, then you're absolutely massively screwed. 5 Wolf Scouts, which I think is probably just a way to get 10 points to go somewhere, because to be honest, the Wolf Scouts are just a really similar thing to normal scouts. They have more weapon options, which funny enough Forrest here is not using, because they can have like I think a Meltagun or Thunderhammer on the Scout Sergeant, which the Scout Sergeant has the twin lightning claws. I'm not sure if this is the most efficient way of using him, but in any case, Scouts are going to be doing scouty things here, and they're not really, well, their role I think is not really changing here. And Gladius Assassin for jumping up and down and potentially staying closer to the center, closer to those big Thunderwolf cavalry units, providing them with the protection of making enemy stratagems a bit more expensive within 12 inches of her. So here's what I think I would like to see in the next iteration of this list, and what I perhaps don't like that much here. First of all, I'm not sure having Ragnar as a leader for intercessors, or as a solo guy, probably even worse, is a good idea. I think he needs either Assault Intercessors at least, or a Blade Guard Veteran Squad, which they're so cheap now, it's almost impossible to make a mistake by adding them to Ragnar, because it's just a very inexpensive and very capable unit in melee. Next is the abundance of the Thunderwolf Cavalry here. I understand that's the idea of the Wolf Jail list, but perhaps it would be more efficient to have more of the Lieutenants on Wolves and maybe one less actual Thunderwolf Cavalry squad. As well as I would like to see more shooting than 2 Vindicators, because as I mentioned, if you roll the d6 shots badly, you are not going to have more than one other chance to roll them well, because you only have the second Vindicator, and if you roll poorly on that one as well, you have essentially nullified your shooting phase, and that is not a good thing, especially if you count on, let's say, killing that tank over there. I honestly think that for the success of a Wolf Jail list, you really want to be able to destroy effectively and reliably some of those most dangerous shooting capabilities your opponent has, that would otherwise be targeting your Thunderwolf Cavalry, your 4-wound model. So you want to target the stuff that is best at killing them, and everything else they should be able to withstand. Otherwise, a really, really interesting list, a really powerful list, and something that not a lot of people would like to play against. Great result, Forrest, congratulations, and we're moving on to our number 1 pick. And number 1 is, you guessed it, an Ultramarines list, but it's not a Gladius one. It's not a Gladius one. I did not want to do another first place Ultramarines Gladius one. It took me a while, but I found the non-Gladius Ultramarines list that won a tournament. And this one was actually 155 player tournament, a 6th rounder in Ireland in United States. It truly feels like we're back in 8th edition here, because it has 3, not 1, not 2, but 3 Repulsor Executioners. Boy, oh boy, do I have nostalgia, because this is exactly the kind of list that I saw during my first tournaments back when I was starting in 8th edition. And this is not like the only thing which this list is pretty weird at. It has 2 Rhinos, which one of them is going to have the Tactical Marines, and I assume the other one is also going to have the Tactical Marines, which are going to split into 2 squads, and one is going to be in one Rhino, the other is going to be in the other Rhino. A very unusual thing to do, and I don't really understand why they would want to do it. but again, if we're going with the 8th edition theme, back then it made total sense. Of course, we have Sarvoth Talem here, who's an indispensable character for any Ultramarines list, especially an Ironstorm one that really wants to have all those extra command points and extra targets for Oath of Moment, because believe me, the first Oath of Moment target is going to die really quickly with this amount of shooting. And we have 2 Tech Marines to support our repulsors and maybe Rhinos, but most likely the repulsors, to heal them and give them +1 to hit. One of them has the enhancement to make damage 0 once per battle round within 6 inches of the Tech Marine for one of the vehicles, and the other has the target augury web, which allows you to select one of the vehicles and give it lethal hits until the start of your next command phase. Also, very useful ability. I personally would choose the Master of the Machine War as well, probably instead of the lethal hits, because I really like that ability to shoot after advancing, and that's something that Ironstorm can struggle with. If you need to move that extra few inches to be able to see your target, it can be a difference between enemy squad being dead and potentially not finishing an action, or finishing an action and giving the points, something like that. So very important to have that mobility, and that's something that I would recommend for any Ironstorm players. Think about the Master of the Machine War first and then target augury web, not the other way around. We have Marnius Calgar with 2 Victrix Guard, and his delivery vehicle in this list is going to be the 4 Company Heroes. A bit more expensive now than they were before, but still a very valid option for delivering Marnius into combat. And Marnius is obviously a boss. He can advance and charge, advance and shoot, fall back and charge, fall back and shoot. That is very important for Ironstorm because you don't have all those nice mobility tricks that you have in Gladius. So having him as this sort of tactical nuclear missile you send into the opponent's midst is going to be valuable. And just to round things off, we have my favorite Redemptor Dreadnought. They are amazing. Redemptors are incredibly versatile, incredibly powerful, especially in Ironstorm, where they can get those extra rerolls. And also the +1 to wound from Oath really helps the Macroplasma Incinerator. Would I go for 3 Repulsor Executioners? No, but is it an interesting idea, and did it work for Zach here? Definitely, and it was a massive victory, so congratulations. This is another reason why I always say that Rule of Cool wins, because if you combine Rule of Cool with some really powerful, actually powerful units like Calgar, for example, or of course Gilman, and good player, you can easily have a tournament winning list, and Zach here proved this concept. One small thing that I would like to see here that I don't is more scoring options, which I assume 2 Rhinos and the Tactical Marines are supposed to be doing that, plus potentially maybe some help from Tech Marines when they're not busy doing something else, but maybe like 1 extra unit, potentially that combi weapon lieutenant we talked about before. That would be like, that would feel perfect in my humble opinion, but that is not a big problem, and this list definitely has some units to do actions with, so no problem. And again, congrats to Zach. No, which list surprised you the most? I think, to be honest, my favorite was the last Ultramarines list, because it's such an unusual and such a throwback to good old 8th edition times. But again, let me know what you think, and thank you for watching, guys. I'll see you next time.